Good evening. My name is Alexander Kraft. I'm the Vice Chair of the Planning Board. Before beginning the meeting, I would like to announce that this meeting is being audio recorded and broadcast live by the City of Beverly. Tonight's meeting is also being video recorded by BevCam. I am also confirming that all the members and staff are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Sarah Bartley.
I am here.
Great. Derek Beckwith.
Here.
Ellen Flannery.
I'm here, Zane.
Great. Wayne Miller. Was that a you're there, Wayne?
I don't think he is. I think that was
No.
someone else.
All right. Ellen Hutchinson, the chair, is not here tonight. Andrea Toulouse.
Hi.
Hello.
Here. Oh, I didn't see you. Okay.
And I am Alexander Kraft. I am here. Should we, Darlene, just give another couple minutes for Wayne, or shall we keep going with the remote meeting?
Wayne said he will be right there.
Okay, I can keep going.
Yep.
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. This is an open meeting of the Beverly Planning Board. It's being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in response to the outbreak of COVID-19, allowing public bodies to meet entirely remote so long as adequate alternative public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And then you can see on your screen the public meeting ground rules. Please review those and refer to them through the course of the meeting. I think the big thing here is that we have a big group at first to start. Unless acknowledged by the board, please remain on mute until acknowledged. Should I give a last call for Wayne Miller?
I'm on mute. Sorry. Yes. Let's see. I did not hear him. But it is, I think a lot of the beginning part of the presentation for the master plan is going to be repeat for him. So I trust that he is going to be on soon and won't need to get up to speed from a statutory perspective. That's not a problem. So if you're ready.
Yeah,
I will.
For agenda number one is obviously the Beverly Beverly Master Plan, final presentation, discussion, and potential vote. Before turning it over to Planning Director Darlene, I would like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication from the Planning Department, the Master Plan Steering Committee, certainly the Beverly community members who participated in this process and under the supervision of Mayor Cahill's office and the mayor himself. With that, Darlene, Planning Director, please take it away.
Sure. So let me share this tab instead. Can you shake your head if you can see that? Good. All right. Thank you. I've been kind of reintroducing the master plan to the planning board over the past few meetings because it's been a while. And thank you to everybody who is here. I'm actually, Emily, can you please admit people while I'm doing this, if you don't mind? Thank you. And I did want to also note Emily Hutchings is here, the Assistant Planning Director, as well as Mayor Cahill, who and I will be giving, trying to run through a quick kind of overview of the master plan and the process that we went through, and open it up for discussion and questions. The final draft of the plan was distributed last week. So I understand some people might not have the chance to really dig into it. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I think you might want to ask if Mr. Miller's here because I think he just joined. Then you can note that he's here.
Okay. Yes.
Wayne Miller, are you present?
There I am. Yep, present. Hi, sorry I'm late.
All right. Nope, that's
All right.
fine. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thanks. So what is a master plan and what does it accomplish? Some of you, if you've been participating in this process, you might have seen this slide already, and apologies, I can't get this to line up correctly, but The master plan is a long-range planning plan that is a comprehensive analysis of the community development and the future vision and recommendations for the city, guiding public policy in a range of areas that I will get into on a future slide, but around land use and public services and mobility. Through the process, we established a comprehensive shared vision for the city, and we included a very broad citywide discussion to get as well-rounded a perspective as we could on a variety of topics that impact the future of the city. So these are the topics that are covered in our plan and are required by state law if you are doing a master plan, that you touch on land use, how land is physically structured, economic development, housing, mobility or transportation, how people get around, cultural and historical resources, the open space and environment, and public services and public facilities. And when we set out on this master plan over a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, when writing the RFP, the mayor made it clear, and in his State of the City as well, that this is going to be a plan where sustainability was the theme that runs through the whole plan. So that the plan that we have developed is environmentally sustainable, it's socially sustainable, and it's economically and fiscally sustainable. And that was a theme that runs throughout all of these categories and is represented in the plan in that way. We've done a lot of planning, and not to dwell on this too much, I'm not going to read them if this has been shared before, but this plan heavily draws on prior plans that we've done. It adopts a lot of those recommendations from prior plans, but it also incorporates future work that we're doing, such as the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan, which is in progress, the Historic Preservation Plan, which is nearing completion, and a future anticipated city equity audit. So all those pieces together can supplement and work alongside our master plan. This is just a snapshot of our schedule that we set out with from the beginning, starting in May of 2019, I think is when we started, and hoping to be done around that time this year, sorry. But due to COVID and the pandemic, we really had to direct our resources elsewhere. Even though we had a near complete plan and we had done all of the public process around developing that plan, just getting the final touches and revising the document and paying attention to that, both from our perspective and the community's perspective, we put that on pause for a little bit. And so now we're here to hopefully conclude the master planning process. So as I mentioned, around this time last year was when, and starting in May of 2019 is when we did the bulk of our community outreach. So over the summer and fall of 2019, we had 3 public workshops, and then we had 7 smaller neighborhood-based meetings. There was an online survey, there was an online mapping activity. We had a master plan committee, which I thank Zane for recognizing them, committee of about 27 or so, no, not that many, 15 or so people who helped guide us and helped set forth, made basically very good comments and reviewed the plan in advance of sharing, or the material in advance of sharing it with the community, and was a sounding board for staff. We also had a series of focus groups, some one-on-one interviews, and we attended a number of outreach events and had tables out at various public events last summer and fall. So all in all, there was, we're very pleased with the outreach. It was in the number of people that were engaged in this process. There was a lot of interest, a lot of responses to our survey, and really good attendance at our meetings. And so we used that public feedback, and actually I did want to stop because I keep saying we, and I wanted to note that we did, for those who haven't been involved in the process, we did hire a consultant, UTO. Tim is on our call just to listen. And then we had a couple other sub-consultants, Nelson Nygaard, Landwise, and Landworks Studio, that were working with them to help put this together. So when I say that we incorporated public feedback, our consultant really did a lot of the work behind the scenes to collect and cull all of that public feedback from the various opportunities and translate those into a vision statement, goals, strategies, and recommendations, and defining it from both a policy perspective and a land use and spatial perspective. And this is an example here of the online mapping exercise that we did, where we asked people where you would like to see different types of different scales of development or different types of changes, or keeping things the way they are, and providing comments on those. And these are some just example questions of the survey, and some people at one of our meetings doing hands-on exercises. So some of the key themes that really jumped out of the outreach and planning process is that how we are housing a changing population, but also our housing needs are broad. And that's something that's only really going to become more prevalent as a result of the pandemic and some of the impacts of that on our population. So we have a growing senior population, excuse me, that we need to address and find suitable housing for people who are downsizing but looking for places to relocate within the community. And also making it possible for people to enter into starter homes, smaller scale housing, people to enter the community who may not have grown up here but who want to live here. So what we've found all along is that there's just a wide range of housing typologies that people are interested in, and a range of, there's need across the board from all income levels. So, and also another theme is that ensuring fiscal sustainability. As I said, that was a real goal from the plan, is to make sure that the recommendations and the strategies that we're putting forth are things that the city can sustain and continue to provide strong public services to the community. And also in response to environmental sustainability, climate change, and addressing the impacts of climate change have been really important to this administration. And as such, we are well underway in our climate action and resiliency plan with Salem right now. So a lot of while there are recommendations related to that in this plan, there is to some extent some reference to the future plan that we're working on, so that those two can work as companion pieces, and the climate action and resiliency plan will be more specific. And also planning for social equity, which is something that it was one of the areas that we had to put more attention to over the summer and early fall. So we did take a second look at the plan and kind of made some key changes and incorporated some recommendations from a focus group that we held with some stakeholders who are involved in anti-racism work, to ensure that we are trying to be as inclusive as possible when we talk about who the community is and how we can meet the needs of the people that live and work in our community. So the plan starts with vision and principles. And while there's a lot of information here, I'm not going to read everything. It's just really a summary of these vision and principles were honed at a public meeting or culled down from information we received from people who attended a public meeting and responded to the survey. And so we have this vision statement, and then these 8 principles. And in the plan, these are paragraphs, but these are really just the headlines. We are a city that meets the housing needs of all residents, that plans for sustainable and balanced neighborhoods, that celebrates cultural and historic identity, that practices environmental stewardship, that advocates health, safety, and well-being, that advances economic prosperity and opportunity, that promotes connectivity and accessibility. That's speaking really in regards to transportation and getting around, and that embraces our diversity and makes life better for historically marginalized populations. So I'll walk just through what the plan looks like. Starts with a letter from the mayor. There's an introduction with a background, why Plan Beverly, what this project means, the vision and principles that I just ran through. and then a discussion about the community engagement. And then we get into the plan recommendations. And I have to say, I like the way that our consultant put these together for us, rather than doing the existing conditions and the recommendations. Every themed chapter has its own kind of quick run through of the existing conditions and data analysis, a brief page on thoughts from the community, a discussion about what the key issues and opportunities are under that subcategory, and then the recommendations. Sorry. So I'm going to just walk through a couple examples just of what I mean by that, just so you can see. So for housing, for example, there's 6 or 7 pages, but we talk about the existing conditions, where housing is and what type of housing we have in the city, what the age distribution is, and this shows our growing, how our population is aging over time and where we're going to have to look ahead in terms of housing need. Talks a little bit about housing character and a number of other things related to the population and the demographics and the income, housing costs and income of our community. And then briefly each chapter has a 1 or 2 page slide on what we heard from the community in regards to from the survey. So, as I said, one of the key issues is housing, and that's why I picked this chapter to go through really quickly. But that, more than 51%, well, actually 51, so more than 75% of people think that housing is too expensive in Beverly, or feel that it's too expensive for them, whether it's renting or buying a home. That's certainly not a problem that's unique to Beverly. It's this whole region and the state is facing that problem, but it is very important and something that we are trying to find a solution to. And then this question asks people, what are the things that people look for in determining where they're going to buy a house or relocate? And some of the most important things were, the character of the neighborhood, what it looks like, the quality of the school district as can be expected, having a vibrant downtown with amenities, proximity to parks and spaces and open spaces. And so then the next part of each section is the issues and opportunities. And there were certainly more in the housing section, but these are the key things that we pulled out based on the existing conditions, the data analysis, and the public input. So for housing, it's diversifying the housing stock so that there are types of housing that serve the population that we have in Beverly that is growing, and the people that want to move into Beverly. So whether we're talking about seniors or young singles or young families, that we have the type of housing stock that can support those types of population. So to get more detail, a senior housing population is, this group of, the segment of the population is aging. And so where can people live when they want to downsize and still stay in the community, and perhaps, sell their single family house to a younger family that is looking to move into it. And talking about design and character was a key issue that came out. What projects look like when they're built in the city, promoting sustainable design. So what tools and mechanisms can the city undertake to encourage or incentivize energy efficiency and other environmental standards of building? Housing costs and inequity of access, which I mentioned in terms of the general perception that housing is too expensive, and how can we help mitigate that through planning work. Housing affordability as well. And I think that's it. So just for an example, this is one goal. There are 5 goals. I did not include this, but so this is just an example pulled out of the plan. So there, for each section, there are maybe 5 or 6 goals. And so for housing, goal A is related to housing supply. Increase the amount and diversity of housing options for individuals and families at different life stages, household compositions, physical needs, and socioeconomic levels. And under that goal, there are 11 strategies. And I'm not expecting you to read them all in this small font, although you might be able to. But I just pulled out, 2 examples. So out of these, so number 2, we allow denser multifamily and mixed use development in the Bass River area and downtown through rezoning. We do get into that in a lot more detail in the land use chapter, which comes before the housing chapter. But this goal in particular has been one of the priority goals, something we talked about a lot in our 3rd public meeting. Well, in the neighborhood meetings, and in the 3rd meeting, where are the places that can accommodate more transformative development in the city and can help meet the housing need by creating new housing units. And the Bass River area has been an area that the city has focused on and would like to move forward with on a zoning change once the master plan is done. And another just example of one is regulate and enforce limits on short-term rental uses to ensure housing stock is fully utilized for permanent residents. This is something that is on and off a problem for the city. It's certainly a bigger problem in some other communities that I'm aware of. But how can we make sure that people are not buying up properties just for short-term rental, and that they're available, because that impacts the availability of units for people who need to move into them, who are looking for long-term housing. So that is just an example. As I said, there's 5 or 6 goals for each chapter, and then it ranges from 5 to 12 strategies under each goal. Another example just is the environment. So environment and natural resources is the chapter name. We cover a lot of different areas here. How much open space is protected in the city of Beverly? How does that compare with open space in Essex County? How many homes are within the 100-year FEMA floodplain? We have a heat map and some other climate-related data and discussion about the natural resources that are governed by the Conservation Commission and wetlands regulations. We don't talk about parks. We do talk about parks in this section too. And then again, the next section is thoughts from the community. So how could the city improve following open space types? We asked the community, could they be better connected, better maintained? Should we be buying more open space or more parks? Do they need to become more accessible? And then we asked, what are ways in which the city can enhance the environment and become more environmentally sustainable? So 15% said add open space or conservation land. 15% said increase use of alternative power options. 17% said plant more trees. 13% said promote more sustainable transportation options. And this one is 14 is reduce trash production and increase recycling and composting. So the environment becomes a very broad ranging section with covering a lot of different issues. So the issues and opportunities that were highlighted here are access to the waterfront, climate change preparedness, and natural resource protection, but a lot of those other subcategories can fall under these goals and strategies. And then this just a sample. I actually covered it inadvertently, but there's 2 goals here. So goal C is outreach and education. Goal D is under here, and it relates to climate change preparedness. So I pulled one from each, but so for example, goal C, outreach and education, is increasing awareness and stewardship of conservation land, open space, and recreational assets so that all members of the community can benefit. So one example strategy for that is to add to the recently established wayfinding signage program to increase the visibility of all open space access points, including secondary trail entrances. For this strategy, I think there's only 3 for this goal. There's only 3 strategies. The rest of this page falls under the climate change preparedness one, and an example there. Develop an aggressive tree planting plan throughout the city, targeting public properties and public streets, where additional planting can enhance the existing tree canopy, as well as high priority zones. Those are here, broken down in more specifics here. And so, as I said, 17% said we should be planting more trees. And so naturally, this is an offshoot of that, or a likely strategy based on that interest in planting more trees. So just, there was, as I said, there is a significant land use component of the master plan, and a lot of the later exercises were focused on, I think I discussed it above in the online mapping exercise, where the city could accommodate kind of more transformative development, where something like infill development, which is development that kind of matches the character of the quality or what the existing neighborhood looks like, kind of similar scale, similar uses, and then what areas are protected. And so these orange areas highlight areas that were defined as priority growth or opportunity areas. This up here in the top left is gosh, I can't even think, Cherry Hill Industrial Park. This is around the North Beverly train station. This is Sawyer, Tozier, and Dunham Road area, the Cummings properties, and Otis Road. And then this is kind of the downtown area, the Bass River waterfront and around the depot, and then the harbor front. And neighborhood centers were identified in areas where we have what's currently our neighborhood commercial zoning. So this is CN zoning district. These are generally areas that already allow a mix of small scale commercial and some residential, and a number of them actually do connect to train stations. And then these other green areas are a combination of priority preservation areas for open space, and the hatched parts are areas that are already protected. And then some of the key, just, I haven't counted yet, but there's lots and lots of strategies. Let's just leave it at that. So I'm not going through them all in this plan, but some of the key place-based strategies that we came up with and that I think rise to importance are encouraging mixed-use development near transit stations, and related zoning updates to adjust and tweak the zoning districts in those areas based on some of the feedback we've received. Looking into allowing accessory dwelling units. We actually just received a grant from the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs to work with the Metropolitan Area Planning Agency to study that. Encouraging adaptive reuse of historic structures. That is another zoning proposal that we've had on the table before, our cultural heritage properties ordinance. And we hope to be able to revisit that in the near future. Enable the development of a wider range of housing types, including 2 and 3 family dwellings, bungalow cottage housing, townhomes, and community housing to meet a variety of housing need. Allowing senior housing by right in more districts, because as we noted, I do think that there will be a greater need for more senior housing. Allowing artists to live workspace in all districts, where currently it requires a special permit in some districts. Discourage development of Greenfield sites by encouraging redevelopment in already redeveloped areas, and expanding protection of currently unprotected open space. And those are really just a highlight of some of the key really place-based strategies, but there are a wide range of strategies in the plan that go from policymaking to programmatic needs, community outreach and engagement, civic engagement, mobility, the provision of public service, as I said, is a significant component. And so the next steps are, here we are at the planning board. The Planning board is the body per state law that approves the master plan. And so it will fall on the planning board to discuss and take a vote and adopt the master plan. We will also bring this to city council because we think it's, although they're not required to vote on it, we think it's important that the city council supports it and supports what the master plan stands for. And then we'll take this plan and I think create an implementation matrix of sorts and prioritize and review on an annual basis to see the progress that we're making, see how our priorities might have changed year to year, and what we can work on each year as we tackle it. So the other slides are just extra. That was the extent of my presentation. I can go into more detail on other things if you like, but I didn't want to spend the whole time talking.
That's great. Thank you so much, Darlene. I guess at this point, did Mayor Cahill, would you like to say a few words before I open it up to the rest of the planning board?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this project, but certainly I want to especially thank Darlene and our former planning director, Aaron Clausen. And you see Emily is in the meeting as well, Emily Hutchings, and our whole planning department did amazing work, in addition to all the various volunteers. I do want to point out on the slide that's being shown, take a look at all of us in one space. Take a look at all that civic engagement and how wonderful and awesome it is. And we'll be back there sometime next year, I know, which will be great. I do want to say there's so much to this, and I don't want to ramble on you, given that Darlene's really kind of succinctly laid it out there. But I do want to say one value of many that's reflected here is that our community of Beverly has always been a place. I don't know if somebody needs to be muted.
Let me mute.
I think it was somebody else, but okay. So one thing that we have always been in Beverly is a community that's welcoming to anybody who chooses to make their home here. We've always had an ability, and you think about it, if you're living in Beverly, either your parents or your grandparents or somewhere earlier than that chose Beverly, or you did, or maybe grew up here, went away and came back. But along the way, each one of us makes a conscious decision that this is a place to call home. And we've always had the ability, people who want to call Beverly home, to find housing that'll work for them. And so that's something that we really are mindful of not losing. It's important that we always can be a place where people who are looking to call Beverly home can find a housing type that works for them. And that means at every level, including affordability. In my age group, I've got a lot of friends who are in a place where they're worried about their parents' housing and they're worried about their kids' housing. Their kids are young adults and some of them want to come back to Beverly and it's hard to find space. Their parents want to downsize, but their one asset, the one kind of nest egg and asset is the value of the home they own. And it's hard for them to find a way to sell that home and still be able to stay in Beverly. So there are just a range of needs. One of our goals is to be sure that whatever period in your life you're in, once you've chosen Beverly as your home, you can find a way to keep Beverly as your home when you move into the next phase of life. So there's a lot there, and I'll just leave it at that because, again, there are a lot of values represented in this plan. They all matter, and I just want to make sure that value of being a home to anybody who wants Beverly to be their home, that we've always been able to see as reality in Beverly, and that we want to make sure that we preserve that ability. So thank you. Oh, and that housing is best offered in ways that don't add vehicle trips to our roadways. So, that brings in that value of transit-oriented development, sustainable, denser downtown settings, finding the right scale of development for neighborhood centers. And Darlene showed you the several we have in Beverly beyond our downtown. So it all kind of flows in together that way. I appreciate the couple of minutes. I'm sure that as you folks have thoughts and questions, we'll maybe have a bit of a back and forth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Murray. I appreciate the comments. I'd like to open it up to other members of the planning board. If any discussion, comments, or questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Derek.
Sure. Yeah, Derek.
Why be shy and hold back and wait and be number 2 or 3 and just come out? I just, first of all, I wanted to say and give a shout out to Sarah Bartley and Wayne Miller from the planning board, who were both on the steering committee as well. And, having been reading and rereading the plan and having attended a couple of the meetings that took place, I just want to applaud where we are with this and thank everyone for this aspirational document. But I also thought, as I was looking through at, these great ideas and the vision moving forward and sort of a blueprint for the issues that we need to tackle, I just want to make sure, as we're looking here and our responsibility is to vote on this plan, that at the same time, it's not so set in stone. So for example, infill development, Bass River, and probably most notably, I think, North Beverly and the different ideas that are being offered in the senior center around the tables, putting our little blocks down for points and things like that to see how each table would reimagine the North Beverly commercial and transit area. But those things were exercises that were quick and at the same time, I know we're COVID challenged here, didn't have a tremendous amount of public input. And I just wanted to sort of verify in my mind, as I'm looking at this document, that what we're looking at here is an approach and issues to work on, but a lot of these details have to be etched and work together and determined. The specific zoning, what it is we mean by infill, what it is we mean by removing tall building overlays. I mean, there's so many different questions here that this is more, to me, sort of a work order for what we need to address and come to further conclusion on. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're right. I like the language that you used, work order or blueprint. That really speaks to it, because a master plan is such a broad, encompassing document that you can't get into the detail to that level. And we talked about it a lot because we did get into a bit of detail when we talked about those areas at that meeting regarding Bass River and North Beverly. And there's a little bit more detail in the plan on those sections, but we still expect this. The master plan doesn't create the zoning, as you said, and it doesn't create the policy statement. It is a guiding document that gives us direction as to, as you also said, aspirational goals for the city. And so each of those elements need additional work. They will take some level. Each strategy has to be implemented, and some of them say we will explore. As much, we tried not to use that loose language as much as possible, but in some situations we just don't know what the community sentiment is going to be, so we want to leave it open that will be another process with the community. And some of the things are a bit more concrete, that we will do, X, Y, or Z. We will implement, X, Y, or Z. But it all requires putting those pieces into place and writing the policy or writing the program or identifying the funding. And yes, so a blueprint, I think, is a great way to put it.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, jump in a bit here, and then after me, I'd love it if Tim Love and his team at UTL did such a fantastic job as our consultants, and Tim's the principal. So maybe after me, he might want to add a thought. So Mr. Beckwith, I think one key point for everyone to understand is that not all, but many of the recommendations here, if we try to move forward with many of these, they will involve necessary zoning changes. And as you know, zoning changes involve the planning board and involve the city council, and involve public process specifically. So, you know, there is going to be much more opportunity. Now, I think that the plan reflects the community value that we continue to have an unmet housing need, and that transit-oriented still is the best way to look to meet that need. Not the only way, but certainly I think the most significant way. And we intend to work to bring forward an overlay proposal for the Bass River waterfront. There's been a lot of input as to how to appropriately design and scale such a proposal. So that we're going to work hard to ensure that what comes forward reflects a lot of the input that we've collectively seen, given, discussed, debated, and received along the way. Similarly, we look to our other train stations and ask ourselves, what's an appropriate type of housing, scale for additional housing, timing of housing. One of the things that we think has come out of the process is a recognition that adjacent to the North Beverly train station, there is opportunity for additional transit-oriented development, and we're not sure when the timing for that will be entirely right. One thing that we recognize is that there are twice as many trains at the depot as there are at the other 4 stations. We want to ensure that the transit that we're relying on for transit-oriented development is reliable, is frequent enough, and so forth. And so these are some of the issues that we're working on with regional partners as community leaders who are advocating for that system to be as robust and as reliable and as modern as it can be. So, those kind of thoughts and factors are going to all weigh into when we might bring something forward, what it might look like. And since this is a democracy in all the right senses of the word, there will be lots of opportunity to really dig into the details as those proposals come forward. Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging me, and I just want to see if Tim might want to join in for a minute.
Sure. I mean, I'll just say that, Derek, I think your characterization was excellent, that a citywide plan is a kind of priority list of the things at a more granular level that a city should tackle next. And so it sets in motion concepts, narratives that just clarify within a very broad spectrum of issues, how to talk about the Bass River, let's say, or how to talk about any of the recommendations that are in the plan. But it provides a larger context. So many of those recommendations are, in a way, a next step of discussion and planning.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, and so I thank you very much for that, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, as well. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, just I want to, Mr. Mayor, you were talking about everyone being able to, who wants to be here, to be able to live here throughout all the different stages of their lives and their kids and everything. And I feel very strongly about that too. And personally, I've lived in Beverly twice. The first time I lived here for about 7 years, and then finally was in the position to be able to buy a home. We couldn't afford to buy a home here with what we were looking for. It was just too expensive outside of our budget, and we had to move out of the city. And that was unfortunate to be able to have enough space for our entire family and what we wanted and things like that. Luckily, 11 years ago, we were able to come back and have, a wonderful home here that we own rather than renting. But there was a big gap in between. And if we can keep that from happening to families, especially for people who, I guess, especially, who've been here from the time they've been children and they love the city, and our seniors who've been here their whole lives, that would be terrific. And I really appreciate the length of the land use and the housing sections here with the different ideas, and I applaud that. But there's a lot of work to be done and look forward to it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Derek. Any other comments, questions from the members of the planning board?
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yep. Hey, Sarah, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the city staff and consultant and mayor, as I think the timing of the plan was challenging. We had a draft before COVID, and I just want to, I think, applaud sort of the willingness to take a pause in March and to really be thoughtful. I think we were talking in our planning board meeting last month about how we still don't really know the full impact of COVID on where people are going to choose to live and where they're going to work, and how long we're going to be working from. A lot of people will be working from home, and kids will be going to school remote. And so I think it's really great that we not hold it any longer, but I'm really glad we took a pause for the months that we did. I think it gave us an opportunity to hone some of the language and recommendations around equity, and I'm proud of that. And just want to say, I think you navigated well the pause, but not a pause forever, and I'm glad that we have it here now. So thanks for that.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Anybody else from any members of the planning board?
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yes,
Eric again. I have a whole list of notes from all the reading I've been doing these last days.
Mr. Chairman, by the way, if I could be so bold as to interrupt Mr. Beckwith.
Sure.
I called on Tim earlier because I had a feeling he'd tell you he liked your question, and it was a great question. So I hope this one's as good.
Well, there were a couple of things that when thinking about sustainability, but also thinking about economic development and the ideas of, the plan really spells out good the economic base that we have right now. I really am encouraged by the focus on clean energy as another industry to try to get more of here. And I'd also just say that broadband, I think, might be another good focus for the city. I say that because I have a tech background in terms of working with technology companies. And also because we have a digital divide here in Beverly, that if we had a anchor or a very solid inroad into the broadband industry itself, that might be able to work hand in hand with coming up with a long-term solution, not just to the expense of broadband for residents of the city, but also to make sure everyone has equal access to high-speed internet in every corner of the city, and every student who goes to our schools, which I think the last year has shown is so very important. So that would be on the economic side. On the transportation side, I think that the MBTA's recent announcement on their severe cutbacks of commuter rail, knowing that it's pandemic related, but it's also due to ridership levels, et cetera, and budget, and their inadequate contribution, I'd say, with only one bus route really coming through the city, makes it important for our plan overall to find some way to put regional or focused city pressure constantly on the state for making sure that we don't lose that resource. So they're already talking about shutting down one of our 5 stations, no weekend service, and limited weekday service, for maybe upwards of a year, which would put a stall on us. So I think long-term, maybe there should be a specific committee or focus or something specifically on our public transportation needs. I'll stop there. I have a bunch of other things, but I'll let other people talk.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Graham, go ahead.
Mr. Beckwith went ahead and topped his earlier comments. That's good. I would say on the broadband, so you know, our cable contract is coming around, and we have revived our cable advisory board. Your planning board colleague, Mr. Miller, is actually serving on that as well. And we spent some time today looking at some micro trenching technology from a company that is interested in coming to Beverly and providing alternatives to what we've got already. And that, we've been talking with them for some time. We also, even though it has not proved fruitful yet, when we've asked Verizon to take another look at us, we're going to do that again as we work through the process of going out for a new contract. It will be, it'll be to everybody's benefit if we can get more than one provider in town. And so we're trying all those things. And your comments about, trying to make sure that digital divide is addressed and bridged is something we're all mindful of and trying to work on. As for the transit piece, I think, as you know, I served on the Real Visioning Committee that the state put together. And we spent close to a year and a half, looking at the needs of the commuter rail system and the future of it. And I was extremely excited and hopeful when the 23-member Rail Visioning Committee, which it had a real diversity in stakeholders, and when we came to a unanimous decision that the state needed to, we had 7 options to look at. We all supported the full electrification and station rebuild of the system, recognizing that in order for it to be reliable and frequent in a way that the region needs it to be, to continue to be economically relevant in the world. So we're talking about economic vibrancy and relevancy for the next century, and as a way to really meet our regional needs for communities to be sustainable, to meet our greenhouse gas mitigation targets and needs, to meet our housing and economic and job needs. People really need to be able to live in a way that they can access their jobs and have jobs in a place that they can access them from their homes. And that it all ties together. And so when you look at the fact that in the here and now, because of COVID, the MBTA is facing this real budget crisis in the near term, we're trying to make sure that that those near-term answers aren't damaging to people in the near term. We're also trying to push to make sure that they don't press pause on the needed longer-term investments. That the transformational modernization of the commuter rail system is supposed to happen now. It's going to take us 20 years, but it's going to take us longer if they can't step up and make the investments now. They being the Fiscal and Management Control Board at the T, voted last year to embrace our Real Visioning Committee recommendation. And they said as a first step, they wanted to bring regional rail with electrification to the Providence line, which is largely already electrified, to the Fairmont line, which goes out through the Hyde Park area of Boston. It comes from South Station on out, and our train line right up to Beverly Depot. So that's something that they committed almost a year ago, and we're trying to get them to put that in their capital plan for the next 2-3 years, as opposed to falling back from that because of the concerns around revenues now. So there's a lot at play. I think your thought that that there be some local ongoing conversation about it and kind of coordination for the advocacy needs is a good one. And we'll look for those opportunities with this board, with the city council, and we'll see where else. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't know that we have any other questions at this point from members of the planning board. We are just shy of 8 o'clock at this point. Darlene, what makes the most sense from a agenda perspective is to continue this. And at this point, I think that just because I don't know if everyone has been able to read through the master plan as thoroughly as Derek has at this point. So I don't know if that makes sense to maybe, again, I'm happy to go with the will of the board at this point, to open it up to more public questions at this point, or maybe this is something that this is important enough that it might make more sense to continue this to our December meeting.
I would just say, and I will defer to the board too, but just maybe see if there are members of the public that are able to make or wanted to make a comment that won't be able to be here in December, or wanted to make a comment tonight, like before we consider that. Yeah. Yep.
Great. Well, that's a great suggestion. I'm happy to open up to any members of the public that would like to make a comment about this at this point. Darlene, what makes the most sense in the chat function to see if they want to?
Usually we have somebody, we have them write, me in the chat so that you know who to call on.
Great.
Maybe there won't be anyone. I don't know. I don't see anyone yet. So.
Well, while we're waiting, this is Derek again. Could I ask a question about the solid waste disposal, recycling, and composting? I'm just curious about what sort of savings in tonnage we've seen through the composting program, because I see that as being a really surprise player in saving the city money and working on our sustainability and environmental commitment.
I'll take that, and then after that, okay. If somebody wants to comment. So quickly, we roughly had 1,200, a little more than that, households that participate in the composting program. We piloted it first for a period of time and found that it tended to divert 20% or thereabouts of their, of a given household's trash from the waste stream. So, that's roughly what we found. I will say that it's hard to try to grow that program because, we all already pay a trash fee, and then to pay another roughly $60, $70 for the, for the ability to buy into that program. Beyond that, there are people willing to do that, and then we kind of hit a ceiling. We have been trying to find a way to bring that composting program citywide without charging. We haven't found it quite yet, but we continue to look for that. And I think the fact that we now have a full-time sustainability director working for the city, gives us more bandwidth to seek these opportunities out. I'll also say that our trash recycling contract is over a year it's over next June. And so, we'll be renegotiating that. And we have some concerns what that might mean in terms of cost to the city, because the recycling markets have been challenged over the last couple of years. I know that's a separate conversation from the composting conversation. Also, just in terms of scale, and this is not to say that composting is not important, it absolutely is. But I will say that the greenhouse gas inventory work that's been done as part of our our climate action planning work has shown that the transportation and building sectors combined for about 97% of Beverly's greenhouse gas emissions. So that's where the lion's share of the focus is at the moment. But again, it's not to say that trash recycling and composting doesn't matter. We also know that when food waste is not composted or disposed of properly, it emits methane, which is many times worse than CO2. So there is that factor to keep in mind with food waste. It is important, and we do continue to try to work through it.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. It looks like we do have actually a couple of questions. Yvonne Rep, I believe.
Yeah, hi. This is actually Rob Levin, 6 Lakeside Ave. Yvonne's my wife. She's here with me.
Okay.
I guess first of all, the overall goals that we've seen, I really applaud. I think we're big supporters of, preserving the green space, redeveloping existing areas, focusing on development around the sort of the transit zones, kind of the mixed use development where it's walkable. You've got sort of residents, etc. But so here's the big but. I live in North Beverly, and we and a number of our neighbors just saw this yesterday, this plan, and I have no idea how we missed all the previous hearings. We've had no input, and so somehow we need to get better plugged in. But what we saw kind of shocked us, because there was this big orange triangle right over our neighborhood as a future commercial zone, and it's a small neighborhood, a lot of little houses. These are our friends and neighbors of like 30 years, and to see that the city plan is that this will be a commercial zone is a shock, to say the least. So I guess, Mayor Cahill, you had said before, development needs to be the right scale. I guess I'd expand on that and say, it's got to consider the scale, the character of the neighborhood, appropriate transition between, where there's maybe single family to something maybe a little more dense, and then, more dense and maybe mixed use, et cetera. And that it kind of preserves an aesthetic that the community is going to enjoy, and see as an addition and an asset, not tearing down the neighborhood they love.
Mm. If I could, can I just
go ahead.
Double check your address? I'm sorry, because I didn't quite hear it.
6 Lakeside Avenue.
Okay, so over in North Beverly. Why don't I ask Darlene to give you the kind of accurate detail on how we're looking at that neighborhood, and then we'll work to get you a chance to talk with us offline. We did try 29 ways till Tuesday to get public input, and I think Tim will probably tell you that the amount of public engagement and input that we succeeded in having in this process was better than most communities, and I think it was it was deep and vibrant. I feel badly that we didn't find you, but I know that we did find a lot of people in your area of town, in the North Beverly Route 1A corridor, along the train station, both sides. So we'll look for a chance for you to better understand this by kind of talking with us offline, and happy to talk with you and your neighbors more in between now and the time the planning board will look at this again. Darlene?
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, so I appreciate your comment, Rob. There was, when this first came up, maybe it was last January, February, there was a lot of kind of conversation or hubbub that I was hearing about, what are we proposing for North Beverly? We had a real planning exercise in one of the meetings just to understand the trade-offs of development and, what you could get for various scales of development. And I want to be clear that while we showed it as, we made a conscious decision to not show, parcel specific data. They show as kind of blobs and amorphous shapes. Our real thought here was that we have a couple of commercial properties that over time might become opportunities for redevelopment, and with kind of strip retail style, single story retail existing structures that could have a higher and better use, specifically on those parcels, and thinking, continuing to have retail on the ground floor with mixed use, with residential above, and perhaps a parking structure that supports the train station. These are just really concepts that we're thinking, but also something that is, the only way we would want to do it is if it's something that is better designed to improve the streetscape and the traffic flow in that area. So by having fewer curb cuts and redirecting traffic internally, you have fewer people coming in and out of 1A. There's 1A. 97. Wait, what road is that? That is 1A. I can't even think right now. Drive it all the time.
Would you mind, Darlene, explaining what the current zoning is there? Because it's clearly it's got a lot of commercial already.
Right now, we're really talking about the parcels adjacent to the train line, rev to the train station, basically, or to the train station, to that triangle parcel on that side of the street for the most part. And it's commercial, it's strictly commercial zoning now. So it would, we were envisioning it as more of a mixed use district that had a walkable streetscape type feel, internal to the site. And we also thought that it's more of a, as the mayor said, it's more of a longer term strategy. It requires a greater investment in the train service so that train service is better and more frequent. We don't want to, put additional housing in North Beverly and have those people drive to Beverly Depot to take the train. That's not going to solve the problem. And so I think that I don't remember the exact words, but the way we kind of structured that as a recommendation was that it's something that's going to require further study and a further public process, not even just writing the zoning, but actually just doing a little bit more digging as to what's most appropriate for that area and what could be accommodated, what could we achieve in terms of open space as well, environmental standards for building and affordable housing. Those are all kind of some of the public services, for lack of a better word, that people want to see too. And so how can you have a balance there and accommodate some additional development?
I'm seeing a comment from them that their neighborhood is R10. Well, certainly the side street is,
yes.
but the whole stretch of road is a commercial district. I'd say this. Darlene pointed out that that it's in some ways it's a question of timing. The reality, I think, is that there will be a day when there's going to be fully electrified, high-frequency train service right on up the line to Newburyport and Rockport. And when that day comes, that stretch of 1A on the side of this, particularly on the side of the street of the train station, right on down, is going to be an appropriate opportunity for transit-oriented development. The question will be, what's the right scale of it for the neighborhood and for that opportunity? As Darlene said, we're mindful that if we're successful in getting regional rail up to Beverly Depot in the next 5 to 7 years, but extending it up the line is 5 to 10 years out from there, we don't want to jump the gun on significant transit-oriented development by the North Beverly train station where people think they're going to move in and take the train from there, only to find out that it makes a lot more sense for them to take the train for the depot. We don't want to put, lots more people on that stretch of road from North Beverly to the depot and back every day. We recognize that even with transit-oriented housing, when people buy fewer cars, I mean, each housing unit brings fewer vehicles than in an outlying neighborhood, and many of the units will bring no vehicles, particularly moving forward. We do still recognize that more housing means more people, and more people will mean more vehicles. So, we also need some improvements to the surface road capabilities in that neighborhood. So there are some issues that need attending to before we think it's ripe for any kind of significant change in what goes on there. And I think you'll see when you look at that section a little more closely that we almost are looking at this master plan as some placeholders for this neighborhood, and it may take a while before any type of mixed-use redevelopment is really ripe for that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Like I said, would love to get more engaged. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Darlene, maybe you could take a stab at this next question. It says, does the planning board have a timeline for voting in the plan? I know you went over it as a preamble to kind of your overview of the master plan, but maybe you can go over the process for voting approval and adoption of the master plan, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time the planning board has had the full plan for about a week. I think it would be a good target, and I think it's reasonable to think, and I would defer to the planning board, but that at their next meeting, you'd be able to vote on the plan. I think one of the other things, if you do plan on continuing it tonight, Emily and I had discussed that we will set up some office hours so that people who have comments or questions about the plan in the community could just call into we'll just be sitting on a Google Meet or something like that, and they can call in and ask their questions. Or, I mean, of course, anybody can call us at any time and ask questions, but something to give it a little bit more structure so that it feels like a public process and people can have their questions answered. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of when the planning board would adopt the plan and then it becomes the new master plan, we would submit it to the city council for their consideration, simply because we feel like that's important, but it's not required for the city council to approve a master plan.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I do want to point out for people's benefit that I've heard a couple times that this is a draft. This is about the 6th or 7th draft. This plan has involved literally thousands of staff and consultant hours, literally thousands of community members' hours. It has gone back and forth for lots of feedback, reaction, improvements, etc. We do believe that it is ripe for you folks to take it up at your next meeting. And I think, Darlene made some good points. We'll do everything we can to help anybody who's, got questions, got concerns, to share those with us and try to see that if we all kind of land in the same place in terms of, knowing that this is the higher level view, and the details will take further action, and will allow for public input and opportunities, and an involvement of my colleagues in elective office in our city council, and you folks in your role as planning board to make recommendations on certain proposed zoning changes. Tim, do you have any thoughts to kind of underline that or give your perspective, because you've worked in so many communities on this?
No, that's right. I mean, I think that it's quite natural that a fully enacted plan results in follow-up conversations, Mayor, that you and Darlene and other members of the planning staff are going to have that are going to have an influence on even priority setting about which of those pieces in the plan you tackle next. In a way, there's going to be interest in particular aspects of the plan that might bubble up, that might require your team's response earlier than others. But I want to reiterate what the mayor said, that there's been a lot of thought put into the plan, balancing, making sure the plan had a point of view, but couched in language that addressed some of the issues that Derek brought up and some of the people who've called in brought up, that in most cases, there needs to be more work done on the recommendations that are in the plan.
And if I could add, Mr. Chairman, I think, hearing from the neighbors on Lakeside now, I mean, this is an opportunity, right? This is a good opportunity. People get plugged in at different points along the way. And, the fact that there is so much process still ahead to most anything that's in this plan, there's a good opportunity here for us to start engaging with this particular group of neighbors. And, I think that just brings greater value and breadth to the whole set of ideas.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, it looks like we've addressed the comments from the public at this point. I'd like to defer to the pleasure of the board as what we'd like to do with this at this point. Don't be shy, Derek.
So It sounds like it would make sense for us to continue this to our next meeting. And what's that date?
I believe it's December 6th.
15th.
15th.
December 15th.
Great. And Darlene, is this a formal motion approval? We need to.
I don't think you have to.
Okay.
I think you're just continuing the discussion on to the next meeting. It's not an actual, application with a timeline or anything. So, yeah.
No, I think that's reasonable. And again, I wanted to certainly thank Darlene, Mayor Cahill, Mr. Love, and certainly the members of the community for joining the kind of the overview of this. To Mayor Cahill's point, I think that, like I said, this is pretty much the as complete the master plan as we have at this point, and I think that the planning board will act on this at our next meeting. But I definitely want to thank everyone for coming in and participating in this process and the thoughtful discussions that we've had tonight. So at that point, Darlene, I'd like to say that we'd like to move this on to the next meeting, and then we can put it on the agenda and have an action on that at the next meeting. Great. Thank you all very much.